Annyeong, it's Mikey here, and guys, thank you so much for all the support, and I'm just really shocked to see how far this channel has come. Honestly, I didn't expect it to come this far, and now I'm actually hoping that this channel can grow even further, and hopefully I can really bring you guys even better content. Now today, I want to thank Yunzii for sending me out the AL68. Now, they actually sent me out an extra pair of switches as well, and we're gonna have to do a sound test, of course, with both, and see what it's like, and really see what this board's all about and compare it with the other stuff. So let's go straight into the unboxing, and please make sure to like and subscribe. So starting off with the unboxing of the AL68 and the Gateron Zero switches. Thank you again, Yunzii, for sending me out both the AL68 and also the Gateron Zero switches. Really big shout out to them because, I'd really want to see the difference between the Milk and the Gateron to see which one was creamier sounding, because the Milks were very creamy sounding for the version 1s, so we're gonna have to see the differences. Now, taking a look, of course, Yunzii provides a really large manual, which is great. They do have an accessories box, and they provide extra keycaps. They give you I'm gonna be honest, a very basic cable. You're not looking at like a braided or a coiled cable, but a very basic one, and a keycap puller and switch puller. Now, the keycaps they provide is going to be for if you want to switch to Mac mode and you want the keycaps to actually match, so that's nice to have. They also provide extra switches, which is also a plus. I think really every company needs to provide extra switches. Now, taking a look inside to see the actual keyboard. Now, the design of this board looks really, really incredible. I really like their designs. I think Yunzii does make really nice looking keyboards and very clean. The special thing about this one is that it has that really nice like mirror on the back, which looks super nice. It's like a mountain on it. I really love the design of this board. In total, this board, we're gonna have to compare this with like the P65 and other 65% I've tried. But of course, before we go into anything else, we need to weigh this board before we do a sound test. Now, the weight of this board is gonna be 1.2 kilos. So now that we've done the sound test on both stock and lubed for both switches, we're going to have to tear apart this board to take a look to see inside. Now, one thing I did notice is that the Milk switches do tend to get really tight with the keycaps, and when you pull it out, it does get pulled out of the board itself, so out of the plate. Now, this is a flex cut plate. Not everyone's going to enjoy that for sure. I definitely understand.
It is flex cut though, so I'm also not a huge fan of flex cut. I'm gonna be honest. I think I personally have come to enjoy non-flex cut now, but it is what we're getting. So there's a total of 6 screws, and we're gonna have to remove all 6 screws to take a look inside. So now getting all the screws out, let's actually open up the board to take a look inside at what we're getting. Now, of course, we're going to have to remove the volume knob, which was actually really simple to do. Some boards I felt was very difficult. This one was not hard at all. One thing I did notice though is that trying to remove the cable from the PCB, very difficult. It's much easier to just remove it from the bottom case in total. Now, they do have a foam that's taped on to the back of the PCB. Like when I say taped, I literally mean taped because it is like super sticky. It wasn't super easy to actually remove. Like it was really difficult to remove. I had to see if there was like a spot that was a little bit looser, and that's what I got to actually remove it. Now, as you can see here, there's a plastic sheet that's actually also taped on to the foam that is actually on the back of the PCB. Now, one thing I did notice is that this is with a gasket mount and has that little like sleeve that actually helps with reducing the vibrations of the board. So it helps with dampening, and it is a PC plate. Sorry, my camera wasn't really focusing, but it is a PC plate. And also you can see here that the stabilizers are going to be the clip-in stabilizers. So they clip into the PC plate, and these stabilizers are lubed, kind of like very little, I feel like, and it does need to be fixed later. Now, the PCB itself is also a flex cut PCB. You can see the cuts on the PCB there, and of course we're gonna have to actually now see the measurements of this. So we're looking at a 1.2 millimeter plate and a 1.2 millimeter PCB. So both flex cut and both 1.2 millimeters. Now, some people I know aren't going to enjoy it. There's people out there that like the 1.6, and I would love to see more companies really doing a 1.6. This has a 6,000 milliamp hour batteries, which is going to be a good amount of battery life for a board that you would like to use wirelessly. Now, of course, we're going to have to take a look at the foamless sound test, but I also want to show you guys how the dampenings happen on this board, which goes right in there in those little sections. Now, going into modding of this board. So what is my thoughts on modding this? The foam itself is quite thin, and I'm going to do a 2-layer tape mod. So as you can see here, that's 2 layers of tape that I put on the back, and then I'm going to have the foam on the bottom. So I don't feel like it has a lot of space for modding because of how flat the bottom casing is, but we're going to do 2 layers. Now, one thing I'm going to do here is, as I said before, the stabilizers felt like they weren't lubed well and had some tinging noises. So we're going to get my syringe with the Krytox 205G0, and we're going to add it into the stabilizers. Using a syringe really helps a lot. It's a much easier process. Of course, it's not the most perfect or the most accurate process, but just having a syringe to add a bit of lube where you need to, and of course adding more if need be, is super useful. And of course, you don't want to do too much lube and have it like oozing out of the stabilizers. Now, the space bar I felt wasn't too hollow sounding, so I'm just going to use just like a small layer of tape to add into the space bar, and then I'm going to give you guys a sound test of this whole modded board with both the milk switches and the Gateron switches.
we've done the sound tests now of both the Milk switches V2 and the Gateron Zero switches. Now, in my opinion, I'm gonna be honest. Out of all the switches that are available on this AL68, because we tried the Cocoa switches last time with the AL80, I honestly think out of all three switches that I've tried, because I've tried all three now, is going to be the Gateron Zero. Now, the Milk is a nice sounding switch, right? Like after doing all the modifications and everything, it does sound pretty good. The only thing is though, is even the version ones, something about these switches I just didn't like. It just has this kind of feel to it that is almost like bumps in it. So it's not scratchy, but it just feels bumpy. And that's something that I personally just didn't really like about these switches is they do have a good bounce though. I'm gonna be honest, out of all the three switches, the Milk switches are gonna have a much better bounce feel than say the Gateron Zero and the Cocoa switches. The Cocoa and the Gateron Zeros are a little bit have a less bounce feel, and the Milks definitely have a little bit more bounce back to it, but they still feel a little bit bumpy. And the thing is, they do sound great though. Some people are gonna really like this switch. I personally just feel like it's not super smooth like the Zero switches. And in terms of the sound profile, the Cocoa is a little bit loud, while the Zeros are like I feel like a perfect balance for myself. Of course, everyone's gonna be different. It's gonna come down to your preferences, and hopefully this videos and the previous AL80 video can actually help you guys out. But we're gonna have to go straight into now like in-depth look of the board, and of course, take apart the switches, do a little bit more look into them and the software and more. So let's go straight into that.
Now, going into a more in-depth look of the Yunzii AL68. Now, this board I do find is a very clean looking board. I do appreciate that it does come with a volume knob, right? And it also has a slot for a USB dongle. It also has the 2.4 if you move to the right, and then when you move the switch to the left, it is the Bluetooth. Surprisingly enough, like a small board like this can fit all these things in there. I honestly prefer a board that has all these available and like a spot that's really reachable. I know it's not the same opinion for everyone, and everyone should have their own perspective and their own opinion of what they prefer. This is just something I'd like to see, and I think it was really well done by Yunzii. Now, the CNC on this board is incredibly smooth. Like, I wish there was some way I could show you guys and like have you guys hear it, but it is super, super smooth. They did a really great job with the finish, and this board does feel like it was really well made. I'm gonna be honest though, the keycaps though are a little bit on the, I would say not the best side, and I don't find that the keycaps were like the best quality. It does feel like there's a little bit of a lackluster quality on the keycaps, and you can see that even on the backspace where the lettering is slightly, erased off. Now, the switches is the Milk V2. I want to try this one because I tried the V1s and I didn't like them. They do have a little bit of wobble, as you saw, right, when I was using the keycaps and just pressing down. There is some wobble with these boards, the switches. Even though they are box stem switches, you can see that there is some wobbling on these switches. And the coloring and the lighting, right, we're going to have to take a look a bit later. But as you can see here with the switch opening, right, you don't use a switch opener for it. You actually have to get your like nails or something in there on the sides to really be able to kind of pry it open and get the latches off of the switch on the bottom, like the bottom housing. I honestly don't really like that because it just takes so much work to really get it working. Now, this is the Gateron Zero linear switches, and as you can see here, I was quite surprised. These switches are incredibly smooth, but they have very little stem wobble. Like, Gateron did an amazing job in building these switches where there's like very, very little stem wobble on these things, and honestly, I really did enjoy them. Out of all the switches I tried from Yunzii that's available for this board, which is the Cocoa, the Milk, and the Gateron, I personally prefer the Gateron the most out of all three switches. The Gateron are really well done, and even though the build quality doesn't seem like it's the most amazing quality, like I'm gonna be honest, the build quality of the Switch kind of feels slightly cheap in a way. It is incredibly well done. I really, really like them. Now, opening up, I want to kind of measure out the switches, like the springs, and give you guys a little bit more information of both. So this is also how I open up the Yunzii Milk V2. I actually use my switch puller and just get it into the latches and really be able to pull it out. It wasn't too difficult with the Yunzii. but it's still not one of my favorite ways to open a switch. Now, measuring the springs itself. So even though it's not the easiest to measure, to be honest with you, like using my tools, I do find that it's a little bit difficult. Sorry, my camera just needs a little bit of focusing right there, but like we're looking at about a 20 millimeter spring on the Milk V2s, and then the Yunzii X Gateron. We're looking at also a 20 millimeter spring for the Gateron as well. So both of them have the same spring length, but in terms of the smoothness of the switch, I would say the Gaterons are actually a lot smoother. The Milk switches, personally, I'm not a big fan of. I feel like they do have a little bit of like a rough feel to them. I can't explain it. The V1s, I didn't feel like they were smooth at all. I did feel like each time I was typing on it, it was a little bit of like almost like there's bumps on the way. Is the best way I can explain it. Like it's not super smooth, but it's not like it's scratchy. It's just it has this special feeling towards it where it does feel like there's a little bit of a bump. The Gaterons though, like the Yunzii X Gateron Zero, is very very smooth. It's a really well done switch, which I think honestly amazing. And as you guys saw, I do have the information of the switches available on screen there for you guys to look at to compare both. Now, one thing I really want to do, of course, is give you guys a backlighting test between the two. And the way I'll do that is I'm going to take out some of the switches. So just so you guys can have an idea, the middle two switches I'm going to have open. And so one's going to be the Gateron, one's going to be the Yunzii Milk. And then I'm going to have the Gateron also beside the other Gateron, and it's going to be covered with a keycap. And then here, that way we can give you guys a little bit more of a nicer backlighting comparison, and then show you guys if there is any color discrepancies for either of the switches, specifically Gateron, right? Because the Yunzii is a pure white transparent switch, while the Gateron does have some color. Now, as you can see in terms of the brightness of this board, it is incredibly bright. I was quite surprised to see how bright the lighting was, and both the Yunzii and the Gateron both have really great lighting. They provide a lot of good lighting for it. Sorry, the lighting there was going back and forth there. I was just seeing to make sure that everything was going well. And in terms of the color profile though, one thing you'll notice is the Gaterons do have a little bit of a color hue to it. And it makes sense. It's because of the housing of the switch itself. It is a very light bluish color, and it does affect the lighting of the board. Now, both are bright, but in terms of color accuracy, you will see that the Gaterons do have a bit of a blue hue to them. So keep that in mind for yourselves. If you are looking at more of a color accurate switch, you will really, really notice that a lot. Specifically, this is supposed to be white, and the Yunzii does come out as white, while the Gaterons do come off a little bit more blue looking. So as you can see here, closer up, it does have a blue hue to it, and it will affect the lighting that comes through it. Depending on what color you use, you will notice that a lot. Specifically, white will not be white. You will get more of a blue color from just pure white of the switch. Now, after we've done this backlighting test, of course, we're going to go into looking at the website. Now, going into the site, we can see that Yunzii is AL68 is selling for 112 USD. It has two different colors, a silver. Even though the website looks white, it is a silver. It's not a white, like a pure white. It is a silver color. And then there's a black. Now, you have three different switch choices, the Gateron, the Cocoa, and the Milk. I would say if you are on more of the creamy side, like what you like for switch, the Gateron is probably your best choice. The Cocoas are definitely a lot more thockier, and that's what I've had for experiences. Now, this is with a double shot PBT cherry profile keycaps, but I personally think that the keycaps aren't the most amazingly done, honestly. I personally think that the keycaps really could use some work. If you go in their software section, you can actually get the JSON file. This is via NQMK compatible, which is amazing to see. One thing I love about Yunzii is that they do have VIA compatibility, and instead of using their own software that like I've seen a lot of companies do, which is scanning something and then using it, they're using VIA, which is great. And I'm seeing more companies actually switch over to it because VIA is just a lot more customizable. It is definitely not like simple work for them, of course, but it is something that really works well. And I really enjoy using VIA because there's so much customizations you can do, and it's just much easier to deal with. And if you want to go even more in depth with customizing, VIA is able to do that, which is awesome. Now, going into Keyboard Inspector, we're going to check the polling rate. And of course, this board is 1,000 polling rate. I did play video games with it as well, and it works perfectly fine. Honestly, if you aren't in like a huge competitive level for gaming, 1,000 is perfect. You don't need any more than that. Now, in total, I want to give you a little bit more information of the board that I felt is that the stabilizers weren't amazing. As you can see with the backspace as well, the letter was washing off. It's something that I think definitely will require QC. I do really feel like the stabilizers could use a lot more work. I felt like even with the lubing, it didn't feel amazing. And one thing I did feel though was that switching between the modes was a little bit of not a smooth thing. Like to get it perfectly into wired, I did have to take a look at it and see where I'm moving the switch. Now, I do want to give you guys a sound comparison with the AL68 versus the other 65% that I've tried. So the Yunzii AL68, where does it stand for me is that for the price range, you're getting quite a bit out of it, right? The other boards, right, the P65, it's around the same price, like at 120. The Zen 65, we still don't know the prices yet. The Pro version is probably going to be around the 180 mark. And then we have the Malectric Zoom 65 V3, which was a good 65%, but it is a DIY kit and it's a little bit different. It's a bit pricier at 200.
Now, I hope this video helps you guys in terms of seeing the differences between the switches. Now, we did compare the AL68 with the P65 and also the Zen 65. Now, where do I feel like this one stands? Honestly, for the price and the whole build quality of it, when you're looking at it, comparing it with the P65 and the Zen 65, of course the Zen 65's build quality and like the whole total board itself, because I have the Pro version, is going to be a much higher level board, right? We're looking at quick disassembly and with a lot more actually punched into that board. This is going to be, I would say, beating out though the Zen 65 like basic version. The basic version is going to be around the same price range as this when it comes out most likely. And honestly, I think for that price range of like around the 100 USD range, I would say that the AL60 is probably going to be a better choice. And the reason why being is that I personally prefer the layout of this board in terms of the feel and the typing experience, and the fact that it has VIA and everything is great. It both will, but you're gonna get a bigger battery life with this one compared to it, right? They're saying that it's most likely the Zen 65 is probably looking at like a 3,000 to 4,000 milliamp hour battery. That's what the usual case is for like a 65%. This one's got a 6,000 milliamp hour battery. Comparing this with the P65 as well, I personally prefer the P65 for the non-flex cut. This one does have a flex cut, so it depends on your preference. Which one would you prefer, a flex cut or non-flex cut? This one does have a bigger battery life than the P65, and in terms of the sound profile, I would say this is going to be coming out to be a lot more creamier sounding than the P65. The P65 is with like an FR4 plate, while this is going to be with a PC plate. The Zen 65 is also going to be with an FR4 plate, and I heard they're actually going to do a lot of other plate options for that, so that's going to be actually more exciting to see. So really it'll come down to personal preferences. I'll say in terms of like what you're looking for, if you want a bigger battery life and at like the 100 USD range, it's going to be the AL68. If you're looking for non-flex cut, the P65, and I would say a little bit more on the higher like clacky side, the P65 for sure. If you're looking at more of like the Thocky and quick disassembly plus like the different plate options, I would say the Zen 65 is probably going to be your best bet. So it's really going to come to your personal preferences. I would say go check out this one. I'll have the links in the description, and please go check out the other videos I got, and I'll see you guys next time.